Pope Francis, a man of his word. If you want to give I know it's a documentary, it's a little bit harder, but if you want to give
I was going to say, I was like, oh man, how am I going to summarize this?
I mean, essentially, like I said, we can kind of work off one another for this. It's essentially sort of a greatest hits compilation of the Pope Francis.
Of what he's been doing up till now.
And a lot of his major beliefs on poverty, income inequality, a large portion of unemployment in South America.
The gay community.
Pedophilia in the archdiocese as well. Which is sort of swept over in a way, but it's still there. And so that's kind of what you get. You kind of get like a broad overview. It's directed by a guy whose name I love saying, Wim Wenders, who directed it's actually the first thing I've seen by him, and he's directed some 24 documentaries. He was the one behind the Oscar-winning Buena Vista Social Club, which again I've not seen.
Yeah.
But Wenders directed this though, and he kind of gives just a very you could tell. I'm just gonna say this right now. You could tell this is a very Vatican-sanctioned documentary. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go too off the rails in terms of really getting into maybe the more radical side of the Pope. I mean,
sure.
I know some Catholics will think this is very radical, socialistic, communistic influence and stuff like that.
You told me to go check out some of the Facebook comments on the trailer, and I saw plenty of them saying we need a religious Pope, not a political Pope.
Oh, I told you, yeah. I mean, there's definitely there's something to be said about the reaction this Pope is causing, but there's a lot of things, and I'll tell you right now, I am not religious. I don't come from a religious background. I know, Joe, you have I was gonna say you do come from.
I went to a Catholic high school.
You do, so you do have a little bit of a connection to this. You know what though? There's a lot in this movie that I do want to talk about. What do you want to say though? Or I was gonna say, what do you want to add?
The one thing I just want to say is man, just learning about Pope Francis, man, what a guy. Charismatic, and not only that, man, I complain about getting up for class in the morning, then I have to come and DJ sometimes, and then other times I need to do homework. Then this man is constantly around the world washing people's feet and going to prisons, visiting poor communities, telling them I have you in my heart, I believe in you, all this other stuff. Man, this dude is on a plane ride to his next location. He's doing interviews on the plane ride.
Even if you think, I'm going to say this, even if you disagree that his claims that Pope Francis, his statements about the presence of homosexuals, you know what I mean, in in the Vatican, the Catholic Church and stuff that are members of that. If you disagree with that, even if you disagree with his statements about income inequality being a very pressing issue, whatever the case may be, I think you'd find, I would think, and again, people have disappointed me in the past before, but I would think you would have a hard time knocking this guy's real social consciousness in terms of trying to give back.
He is truly a man of his word.
To a lot of people. You know what I mean? In terms of what he does going around the globe, I mean, going to, impoverished communities, going to war-torn communities, going to communities that have gotten hit by hurricanes.
There's a scene in this movie where it's him looking at a bunch of refugees fleeing, and on one of the refugee boats, it flips over and people are stranded in the ocean. And the look on Pope Francis's face, I was expecting him to take the cap off his head, throw it on the ground, and just be angry from the look he was giving.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, it's when he has to see, the trash that's built up in a lot of these, third world countries, and stuff.
You can tell he really cares. He's 100%... He is a man of his word. This title nails it perfectly.
I think you would find it hard, and this is coming from somebody who very cynical about politics. Somebody like me, very cynical about politics, social change, a lot of things. More cynical than I think I have any right to be. I think you would have a very hard time trying to make a justification that this man is inauthentic. A lot. I mean, maybe not everything, but a lot of it. Because there are critiques of him, and some of them are warranted. I have read up on him. There's critiques about Pope Francis that he's kind of like an Obama-esque figure in the negative sense that he's very much about sort of rallying together and emphasizing social change, but you could also say that he hasn't done his part on especially the big case is the sexual abuse in the archdiocese. He's not been as proactive on that as a lot of people think he should.
And even in this documentary, they cut that part short too.
They really do cut that part short.
I mean, it cuts to black, and you're thinking it's going to open up with something dramatic, and then it just cuts to the next issue.
It kind of passes that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm thinking okay, that's the part where he's a little bit slumped on. You know what I mean? Where it's I don't know how much much he can actually do or like how much he really thinks of it as a huge issue. But anyway, there's a couple really good moments in this thing. And you know why I call him like, and I don't say this part in a negative way, but like, you know, he's very Obama-like in my opinion because the speeches he gives. The one thing that I loved about Obama as a speaker is that not only was he charismatic, but Obama had a way of really naturally inflecting or injecting humor into his speeches.
Oh God, yeah.
Like the way Pope Francis does it looks like he took a page out of that playbook. Like what he's
Exactly.
talking about when he's talking about how he's like with families they argue sometimes
In Philadelphia.
Yeah, sometimes plates fly. Plates fly, and then he says, "I'm not going to say anything about mothers-in-law."
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And like there's a very commoner aspect about him that you can't ignore. And then also when he tells a large portion of I think he did this in Argentina when he talks about the 3 T's, trabajo, tierra, and teco, which is work, land, and roof in Spanish. He talks about those are the 3 things that like every person that are like the cornerstones of a person's dignity, for better or for worse. But yeah, go on. I was gonna say with your thoughts. I'm kind of bloviating.
I loved seeing like how much he does around the world, man. Like it is astonishing. It made for like some very interesting, it made for a very interesting documentary with, watching him go around the world. Not only that, I mean, this was really well shot as well. There are great shots of like where he's riding in the helicopter and he's just looking out and he has that moment of silence just to himself. And you're wondering like, man, what is he thinking of next? Like, what? I got to go here now and then I have to go here and then I have to go here and then I'm finally going to go home, or like, you're wondering that. And then there's like scenes where he's walking around like other religious temples and stuff and he's giving it respect by praying at them or something. And just like those shots of him just standing there and like leaning his head against a wall or something, they are really good to look at, especially the Vatican scenes, man, where he's just walking around the Vatican by himself. He rejects, to one thing that's a really like point that's carried through a lot of this movie, is that he rejects a host of like the ivory tower stereotypes of that popes usually have when they're very disconnected. They spend a lot of time at the Vatican. From what it looks like, and again, I've read this too, he doesn't spend a lot of time at the Vatican. It's a lot It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of like budget traveling as well, where he doesn't spend a lot of money. He doesn't come in like flashy. Oh yeah, you know what I mean. They show a clip, vehicles, and I remember seeing this on the news, and this was like the first time I was really introduced to the man. Is like, not introduced to the man, but really like got like a really sense of him. Was they show the clip of when he's in New York City and he's being escorted by SUVs, these big, huge black SUVs, and here he comes around in a little compact car, and it's just like you have these big hulking SUVs escorting him, and he's in like a little like smart car, basically compared to size. Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, you have that. You really have that. Like he said, I think the thing is like the Mr. Bean car. Yeah, that's what they call it, which I find really funny. But. Anyway, I was gonna say there's a lot of really nice shots. There's also one thing that's really carried through this movie is that there's also a lot of trying to think. There's a great deal of. I'm losing words here. There's a great deal of dramatizations of Saint Francis. Saint Francis. You know what? I actually didn't like that. You didn't care for those. I didn't care for those. I thought they were kind of cheesy. I agree. Like there's one too. The way they dissolve this scene, so like Pope Francis says something and he gives like his closing statement, and it does a Looney Tunes dissolve. A circle closes in around him till it's like a black screen, and then the circle opens up, and then it's Saint Francis, and it's a guy, doing a dramatization of Saint Francis walking around the Vatican with his eyes wide open and being like, "Oh, I'm Saint Francis, look how glorious I was." And you could tell it was shot in today's world. You could tell this guy is just like an actor or something, because just the way he looks, teeth perfectly fine. The beard looks perfectly fine compared to like probably actually what St. Francis's beard really looked like. Yeah. Like, I mean, it just felt cheesy and kind of unnecessary. Like, I was just sitting there, I was like, you know what? I would have preferred just looking at photographs or artwork of St. Francis. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And there's also the element, and this is the one thing that I think knocks it down. There's also a real element here, and I don't know if Wenders movies are like this, but there's this constant need to like have this patchwork narration where it's a lot of telling, not showing. Yeah. Where like with all the great footage you have, I don't think a lot of it's necessary. Exactly. I think Wenders narrates too much here. You know what I mean? He did the narration? I believe he did. I was going to say, I'm going to double check on that, but I believe that was him. There's just too much narration here, I think, that like obscures that. And then couple that with the fact, too, that you have, like you said, some really
I agree with you.
Yeah,
really,
it is him.
It is him. Really cheesy, sort of like dramatizations. I think that kind of throws the movie off. In a way.
It definitely, like, because there are times where I was really into this, and I'm like, man, I'm really loving these scenes. And all of a sudden, it cuts to a black and white scene of some guy bumbling around in a monk costume.
Looks like a cheap remake of like the Seventh Seal. That's
Yeah, exactly.
Like. We've seen that. No, but the other thing was too is I couldn't figure out, and it didn't come clear to me until I saw the credits at the end, is that I couldn't figure out if they were taking these clips from other movies, like a movie about St. Francis or an old reel of St. Francis or something, or you know what I mean, like a movie or something on him or a short. I couldn't figure that out, but no, these were made for the movie.
Okay.
These were made for the movie, and I just thought that was a little odd. You know how they had that. You know,
Yeah.
I think they really just wanted something. I think they really just wanted something to show over like Pope Francis talking about where he took his name from, and they didn't have a lot. They didn't have a great deal of like artifacts to draw from
St. Francis himself.
From St. Francis himself, so they had to like create these weird dramatizations.
But yeah, man, I mean, it is just it stands out. It completely stands out from the movie, and it's just like, okay, can we get back now? Because this is not fitting.
Yeah. Anything else though? I mean, like, there's not a ton to say about this. There's a lot of legacy elements in this though, because it really makes clear that like Pope Francis, he's the first Jesuit.
Yeah.
He's the first Jesuit pope.
And first Americans pope.
Yeah, pope from the Americans. He's first South American, first American, period. He's from Buenos Aires in Argentina. Yeah, so there's a lot of like firsts for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I go back to the point though, like I don't know how you can watch this, and even if you disagree with like maybe some of the more political things, because I mean like it's no secret he does get political. It's no secret.
Oh yeah, and you see it throughout this documentary.
He makes a compelling claim, and I've heard some televangelists claim as well. He makes a compelling claim that a lot of the problems that this world, I'm not going to say this country America because it goes beyond that, but this world faces they're spiritual issues. You know what I mean? Their issues are spiritual in nature. Whether or not you agree with that, I'm not sure if I agree with it, but it's a point that's really argued here that's made interesting, I think.